All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How is everyone doing today?
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to be here. It's a lovely, lovely day in our beautiful city, so thank you for the invite to speak. So, as Reverend Deborah mentioned a moment ago in my bio, I began my spiritual journey a couple years ago. I feel like I started late in life. And so, back in 2016 is when I gave my very first sermon. And that was at Fraternal Spiritualist Church in San Diego under Reverend Millie. And she asked me to speak one night, and I was honored because it's my first time, and I was still a baby to everything. I just finished taking classes and just, still feeling, nervous about everything. But I was so happy to have found a thought pattern that felt more true to me. So anyway, that first talk, I discussed how coincidences were merely confirmations to let us know that we were on the right track. And in the beginning, I was experiencing so many little coincidences. And I think my spirit team did that because they knew I was new and I needed little keep goings and you can do it. And so I'd get these cool little things that happened all the time to keep me on my path. And so, I was also just stepping away from my Christian church that I've been going to for 10, 15 years. And I was getting a new set of spiritual friends. And my Christian friends were kind of backing away a little bit because I was doing this new weird thing. And so it was a joyful time, but it was also a very difficult time for me. I was very skeptical and full of doubt of this path that I'd been taking. And I was wondering if I made the right choice, if I made the right leap. And, but my spirit team, I call them my angels and my guides, my gatekeepers, they were so loving with me. They just consistently gave me a little nudge, you're good, keep going, go ahead, keep going. and so they told me to just keep trusting, keep moving forward, and I'm glad I did. And to that end, I have a little bit of a story to share because you guys know I love stories. And so today is Sunday, and so on Wednesday, I got an email from a friend, and I will read you what this email said. She said, I wasn't planning on another email so soon, but I went shopping today, and luckily everything is within walking distance. The thing is that on my way to the store, I must walk by the canal that runs parallel to one of the main streets all the way to the sea. She's in Italy. And surprisingly, it's home to a family of ducks, fish, and other birds, and has been for quite some years. I say surprisingly because the city hall never does anything about it, like cleaning it. So you might imagine the smell when the weeds start to rot. Anyway, every time I go by, it's hard not to get surprised by the beautiful white calla lilies growing in the midst of all that ugly. So it came to mind one of the pictures you posted about a small flower growing in a crack in the asphalt. And you spoke about that in one of your sermons. And speaking of sermons, you said that you're still thinking about what to say in your next one. I'm always late with my sermons. So looking at those flowers, I thought about how there's always two sides to the same coin. The good, the bad, the beauty and the ugly, the truth and the lie, the pain and the joy, and so on, and so on, and so on. And about how they never go one without the other. I guess that there's beauty truly in the eye of the beholder, and that resilience and grit does allow beauty to grow alongside the ugly. It all depends on how you want to take it. It's just that. The sad part about it is the fact that we spend our lives passing by so caught up in our worries, frustrations, and all the rest that we ignore the simple, beautiful things and just take them for granted. I've attached a photo I took of the white calla lilies and hope it might help you come up with an idea, if you haven't already. And of course I haven't. I was like, oh, thank you. So anyway, so let me fill you in a little bit more about the significance of that email that she sent me. So first, my friend, I met her in 2019 in the village of Monterosso, which is one of the 5 villages in the Cinque Terre off the coast of Italy. And I met her because I had been to the Cinque Terre back in 2011. And back then I was only able to find one hotel room in all of the 5 villages along the coast. And I had been coming from Florence, And when I told people in Florence that I was going to Cinque Terre, they were like, well, did you book a room? I was like, no. They're like, well, you're not gonna find a room because you must book ahead because it's a Cinque Terre. And I was like, this shop. So anyway, I get there and I stopped at the first city called Riomaggiore, and I roamed the city. I couldn't find anything. When I tell you I roamed that entire city and I could not find one hotel room, nothing. So I remember going into this one building that was close to the sea, and I go in and I said, do you have any rooms? And she's like, no. And I was like, great. And so I was like, man, I just hate to come all this way. Where are you from? California. Oh, the owners of this hotel are from California too. And I was like, oh, look at that. And then she goes, well, wait. She goes, well, there's a room, but they may check out today or they may not. I don't know. So if you come back at 3 and they've checked out, you can have the room, but you can only have it for one night. And I said, great, because I only have one night here before I have to be in the next city. So I roam around Riomaggiore, see everything, and then I come back at 3 and she's like, they checked out. Lucky you. I hope you don't mind, it's one room, it's in the front, overlooking the ocean. It's one of their best rooms. And it was like $65 because I had cash. It was the best. So I spent that night, literally, it's the type of room where you open the window and you're looking at but it was that room. And I was sitting there like, and I remember getting a glass of wine and I'm just sitting there, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So I just remember that room and that experience, and I told myself, you know, I'm gonna come back to the Cinque Terre one day, and I'm gonna get that same room, and this I'm gonna stay like a week. It's gonna be amazing. So in 2019, I came back to Italy to do just that. So I took a train, I'm going to Cinque Terre, and somehow I'm looking off, and I missed the stop for Riomaggiore. I don't realize that I missed the stop until 3 towns later. Oh, and I was like, what the heck? So I get off at the last town, which is Monterosso. It's the biggest village. And I said, okay, you know what? I will just get back on the train. But it was so crowded. So I said, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm tired. Let me just stay here for one night, get on the train tomorrow, go back to Riomaggiore, find a hotel. So I do that. Well, I think I'm going to do that. I roam Monterosso to find a hotel room. Same problem. Do you have a room? No. Do you have a room? No. Oh, we have a room, 300. Oh. All the rooms that I found were so expensive, and I was flabbergasted, and I said, man, okay, this can't be. So I walked, finally on the outskirts of town, and I found one, and it's like $200 US. And I was like, oh, all right, I'll do it. And it wasn't even cute. It was just like, it was just down an alley, but at this point, I was like, oh, fine. So the guy says, you know, it'll be cheaper if you pay cash. I said, all right. So I look and I don't have enough cash. Like, I think I was like $20 short. So I said, okay, sir, let me go to the bank and let me just leave my bags here, and I'd rather pay now because I'm going to be out here first thing in the morning to go to Riomaggiore. You know. So he's like, okay, you can leave your bag. I'll tell you where the bank is in the town center. So I do that. I go to the town center, and I happened to walk by this doorway that was open, and there's a woman sitting at a desk in there, and she caught my eye. And I kept walking, but then I turned and I looked on the door, and it said it was a bed and breakfast. So I said, oh. So I walked over and I said, hey, hi. Do you happen to have a room? She said, yeah, we have rooms. And so I said, okay, well, how much? And it was like a fraction of the cost that I was going to pay where I just was. And I said, well, let me see the room. I go up, and it's a gorgeous little cute room, such a quaint little place. At the very top of the hotel, they have a little terrace with the little iron gates and the trellises with the little flower. It's so Italian. and she goes, and we have wine for you. And I was like, oh, this is so much better than the place that I was gonna, you know. So I said, okay, I'll take the room. And so she says, yeah, do you want to pay cash? Yeah, and I said, oh wait, but I left my bag in this other place, let me run back. And she goes, okay, well, I get off work in just a few minutes. And I was like, oh. She goes, but you know what, I'll hold the room for you. I'll leave a note for my coworker. Go do what you need to do. When you get back, the room will be here. So I race back to the hotel. I tell the guy some story about how I'm gonna get on the train and go right back to Riomaggiore, and he lets me leave without paying anything. And so I do that. I go check into this hotel, this new one, and the coworker let me in. It was great. It was gorgeous. It was like, oh, it was amazing. And I said, okay, Spirit team, that was interesting. You guys must be up to something. So I spend the day roaming around Rio Maggiore, and I go get some food, and I come back, and I go upstairs, and I sit on the terrace, and I'm drinking my wine, and I'm eating my linguine, fruta di mare, and I'm just enjoying everything. And I'm drinking the wine they have up there for me. It was great. It was just a beautiful evening under the stars. And I remember going back to my room, and I'm reading, and I'm journaling like about where I'm gonna go the next day. And I hear some loud noises in the stairwell. So I open up my door, and I see this couple lugging this heavy bag up the stairs. And because the stairways are really narrow there, and there's no elevators. And so I looked, and he looked at me, and I was like, oh, I'm like, sorry. And then we smiled and kept going. Closed my door, didn't think about it. So the next day I came downstairs to have breakfast, because this place came with a free breakfast in the morning. It was great. So I had breakfast, and I told a lady, who was now the lady that I met when I first came the night before, and I said, hey, I'm having breakfast, but I'm gonna be checking out. And she's like, you're gonna check out? I was like, yeah. Well, are you sure? Yeah. Gotta go to Rio Maggiore to go find my hotel. So she's like, well, yeah, you should stay. And I said, no. But she kept like, I was like, this is really weird. And I let it go, and I went, and I had my egg, and I'm eating my breakfast. And as I'm doing that, the couple from the night before came downstairs, and they were like, hey, good morning. Can you tell us all about the sights of Rio Maggiore? She's like, sure. She gazes at me back in the corner, and she opens up a big map. So here we have this. And then I was like, is she talking to me? Why is she talking to them? Because they're the ones asking. So she's explaining all this, and I'm eating, and I'm just trying to ignore it, but I'm eating. And I do make eyes at the couple, and they say hello to me, and they're American. And guess where they're from? California, of course. And oh, they're from Northern California and Southern California. Oh, nice. Okay, you guys enjoy your day. Bye. Until they leave, and then she's looking at me. Looking at me, and finally I was like, okay, you know what? I said, Spirit, I can leave later, so let me just stay. It's fine. So I go to her and I say, okay, I'm gonna stay. She's like, oh, good. So I finish, and I go upstairs, and I unpack my bag. I go out, and I see all the sights that she described, and it was actually really good. I went to a winery. I did all. It was nice, So I'm glad I stayed. And I spent the day walking around. I said, okay, I'm hungry. Let me just go get some dinner. So I said, I want to get a pizza tonight, a good authentic Italian pizza. So I got a pizza, and I said, I'm gonna go on the terrace. I'm gonna have some more wine for my last night here. So I got my pizza, I go upstairs, and guess who's on the terrace? The couple. The one table on the terrace. And I was like, dang. So I prepared to go to my room, and then they're like, no, stay. It's fine, we'll make space. And I was like, all right. And they go, we have wine. I'm like, all right. So I sat up there, and I had wine with them, and I shared their wine, and I gave my pizza, and we talked, and we spent some time getting to know each other. The question people always ask is, oh, well, what are you doing here? And their names are Carl and Donna, and they said, oh, we're retired. We travel all the time because they're in their 70s. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to be when I grow up, retired. So they're like, well, what do you do? And I said, oh, well, I was a lawyer, which I was at the time. I said, I'm a lawyer, but I really own my own business doing spiritual healing. And his face goes, oh. And I immediately go, oh, great. The reaction that I get when I say I do spiritual stuff, but instead he said, actually, I have some questions that I've been dying to speak with someone about, because his wife really didn't care for this stuff, and he's like, I have questions about the afterlife and about energy and I was like, really? So we spent the next few hours just gabbing it up about these things, and it was awesome, And so as I'm there, I'm thinking, okay, Spirit team, this is why I was supposed to stay so I can talk to Carl about all these things he wanted to know. And it was great, and I learned so much about them as well. And side note, they had known each other since they were kids because their parents were best friends. So they grew up together. Both left their small town, got married, got divorced, came back to small town one day, and then here we are, they're married. So I was like, that is so cool to have known someone this big. And here you are, you know, they know it was just an amazing thing for me to behold, and I was blessed for that experience with them. And so by the end of the night, they had invited me to their place in Belize because they own property. And so they're like, you should come to Belize. Come visit us in our summer home. And I'm like, sure. Well, for those of you who know me, back in 2020, I went to Belize to stay with Carl and Donna. And it was great. It was great. And so we're still friends to this day. We talk every now and then on the phone. And in fact, they're coming to a retreat that I'm hosting in Mexico and Ensenada in September. So that's the relationship that I formed from that night in Italy. And so it was amazing. So let me go back to Elena. So as you can imagine, when I checked out of that place, I thanked her for her hospitality. And we exchanged contact information. And I said, you know, thank you for making me stay. I met this really cool couple and they're great. And I just want to thank you, you know. And we started emailing each other back then in 2019 and we haven't stopped. So we still email each other. These long, paragraph emails, and throughout COVID, and I got to hear what was going on in Italy and the lockdown and all these beautiful things that her and her husband were dealing with, and it was really nice to have that pen pal relationship that we used to have when we were young. And but actually it wasn't until a couple months ago that I actually explained to her the significance of her in my life and how that meeting with her caused me to meet Carl and Donna, which ended up me going to Belize, and she had no idea how instrumental she was in that for me. And so what's actually funny too is because of that interaction, Carl came back to his hometown, began taking spiritual development classes and all this other stuff, and here he is in his 70s rediscovering a beautiful part of life that he had never had a chance to tap into. So it was beautiful for everyone involved. So our meeting that day was no coincidence, going back to coincidences. And so, let me tell you, so by the time I did check out and go to Rio Maggiore, guess what? That hotel had been knocked down, torn down, and there was something else there. So had I even gone there, which is why I missed the train, because it wasn't even there. And Spirit team knew that, but they just wanted me to go through all that rigmarole. Anyway, so you know, so I was blessed to meet 3 wonderful people that have changed my life because of that. And so that story to me was full of one coincidence after another for me that led to confirmations that I was indeed where I was supposed to be, meeting the people I was supposed to be meeting, and because it would lead to something better. But it doesn't end there. So back to the email that Elena sent me. So over the years that I've known her and been, you know, writing, she knows what I do. And it's very new to her because she's actually Romanian who lives in Italy with her husband. And they wanted to find a better life. And so she grew up with a very different background, if you know anything about Romania, and their religion. And it's very, very different, very, very regimented. So the things that I do and talk about are very foreign to her. The word spirit, it's like, what do you mean? And so, despite that, she reads my newsletters that I send every month to my clients. Whenever I do a sermon, she watches it on YouTube because the time difference is so far away. But she supports me in that way, even though this is something new to her. And so when we emailed the week before, I told her, I'm working on a sermon, don't know what I'm talking about, yada, yada, yada. And so I also didn't tell her that I had been toying with an idea that had been on my heart for a few years, but I didn't know how to tackle it. I didn't say that to her, I just said I'm working on a sermon, trying to figure it out. But because this thing that I wanted to talk about, I still didn't know how to broach it, I was like, I'll just talk about something else. And then I get her email. And I was like, okay, something's up here. And let me talk about that email. What struck me as important with that email is, and why it became central to this whole talk today, is that the words she used in that email, which I found way too coincidental. So she wrote that every time she walked by, she was surprised by these beautiful calla lilies, and that it reminded her of a picture that I took of a flower growing out of a crack in the asphalt that I spoke about in one of the sermons. So that thing she's talking about is a sermon that I gave at this church last January. And I was like, she's referencing a sermon that I gave, and she didn't know where I was speaking. So I was like, And I was like, okay. And it's a flower again. I was like, okay, something's going on here, but let me let it go. And then she said, if you're still thinking about something, I'm looking at these flowers, I thought about always being two sides of the same coin. I gave a sermon, my very second sermon in 2017, about strength and vulnerability. Two sides of the same coin was the title of the sermon. So I was like, all right, something's going on here. So, and I had not posted that sermon. It's not posted on my YouTube. So Elena doesn't know about it, hasn't heard it, but yet parroted that same language to me. Again, coincidence? There's a confirmation that I knew that I was on the right track. And it tugged at my heart to talk about what I didn't want to talk about, because I kept trying to ignore it, because you know, we're stubborn. So the day before I got her email on Tuesday, I was driving around, I was listening to a Christian station called Air One. Some of you may know that station here in town. And every now and then I get their signal, because it's kind of like an AM, FM kind of weird signal. So every now and then it comes in and I catch it. And I was driving and I caught the station, and I was listening to the DJs talk about a topic. And I remember one DJ saying that when one doesn't devote time to prayer, God hides his face from the person. And I remember having a visceral reaction when I heard that. Like angry. I was like, God hides his face. God hides his face from someone because they didn't pray enough. And in the Christian faith that I grew up in, we were taught that God loves us, you know? So why would he turn his face from us when we need him the most? And it really aided me the rest of my drive, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna talk about that. Like, I gotta talk about that. And then I remember thinking, maybe it's too heavy. I don't wanna offend anybody. I don't wanna ruffle any feathers. I don't wanna ruffle my feathers. I don't wanna talk about it. I'll just save it for another day. And then the next day I get Elaine's email, and I was like, dang, I guess this is the day. So I thought it was no coincidence that she referenced two of my previous sermons in her email, one that I gave at this very church. And I feel like it gave me the support to understand that even though there was ugliness, as she talked about with her calla lilies in the canal, ugliness in Christianity, I knew that there was still equal beauty in it. And I knew that there was space for that beauty to grow alongside of the ugliness that we also find in that same Christianity. And because there are no coincidences, I thought I would look more into the calla lily flower that she sent me, because I was like, you know, what's up with these calla lilies, you know? And here's the flower that she took a picture of and put in an email. So for those of you who don't know, white calla lilies, they're like open and they have these little buds in it. So this is the picture that she took of the canal with the calla lilies. So they were gorgeous, huge. And so what I found out is that in Greece, calla lilies are used to represent both death and resurrection. And I said, interesting, like these calla lilies growing and dying weeds. Interesting. The calla lilies are also used at funerals as a symbol of love for the person who passed away and as a message of comfort for friends and family that they left behind. And I said, like the event that we're holding after service about bringing through messages from our loved ones who have passed on. Another thing said, these lilies are often used as a symbol for the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I said, like the very topic of Christianity that I've been trying to avoid talking about. So she sends me these calla lilies, and I was like, dang, these seem to symbolize everything that today was going to be about. So I had to talk about it. So after reading about that flower, and I knew that, you know, this needed to be talked about. And the thing that had been weighing on me for years is Christianity versus spirituality. Just like that. Because I hear it a lot. And more specifically, where did I fall on that religious continuum? Where did I fall on that? And I described it as a continuum. And I remember saying that word, and then I knew the word, and I use it all the time, but I said, what's the definition of that word? And the definition says, you'll be wondering, it's defined as a continuous sequence in which adjacent elements are not perceptibly different from each other, although the extremes are quite distinct. I'll say that again. It's a sequence in which adjacent elements are not perceptibly different from each other, although the extremes are quite distinct. And I said, that's exactly why I chose that word, because that exactly describes my wrapping my head around Christianity versus spiritualism, spirituality. And I remember when I first began my spiritual awakening, I was so torn between what was ingrained in me from my Christian upbringing and the experiences that I was seeing, feeling, couldn't deny. And when people would ask me my faith, I would say, I'm not Christian anymore, I'm spiritual. And I struggled with saying that. Like, sometimes it kind of bumbled out of my mouth. And I thought to myself, what did that even mean? Like, have I disavowed Christianity? Like, I grew up reading the Bible, going to, like, am I turning my back on that? Was I going to hell now? Because some people told me I was. I'll say that. Some people prayed for me all the time. Oh, I'll pray for you. But the truth of the matter is, the more I began in this, I began to not believe in hell anymore. And then I felt bad for not believing in hell anymore. And then I was like, well, dang, do I believe in heaven too? It caused a whole rabbit hole in my mind that I was really torn. I struggled. And then I also struggled with the distinction of God being male. It just opened up a whole Pandora's box for me. And I struggled. And I felt bad because I love God and I love Jesus. It was so hard for me. And so to ease the mental gymnastics that I was going through constantly, I finally said, you know what, I'm going to begin to refer to God as the creator of all that is. I'm going to begin to call God source or divine source, because that felt more intuitive with me. And I didn't have to put God in a box of being male or female. And once I did this, my mind began to feel more at ease and my internal struggle lessened, because I began to remove some restrictions that I realized I had and we had as humans put on God. And then also found that I still believed in Jesus. I still believed in his message. I still believed in his teachings. But I realized that it was the interpretation of those things that I was struggling with. Not Jesus, not his message, not his teachings, but how it had been interpreted now. That was my struggle. And I felt that I understood what Jesus came to teach us, which was the truth with a capital T. That we are loved unconditionally by the Creator. That nothing, no thing can separate us from the Creator's love. That we can have a direct relationship with the Creator because we are part of him and he's part of us. There's no separation. And no middleman is needed. And whenever I found myself falling into doubt about whether I was heading in the right direction with my unlearning, I feel like God, the Creator, would send me a little wink, a little nudge that said, no, you're okay. I'm still here. Keep going. I'm right behind you. I promise. I didn't leave you. You didn't leave me. You can't. Always gonna be here. And he would do this in the cutest of ways. I'd be thinking about something, struggling with something, and all of a sudden I'd hear a song that would pop that. It's like, oh, okay. Or I would be thinking about something and someone would mention that very same thing. I'm like, oh, okay. And I began to get excited. It's like God was saying, you're good, it's okay. I wasn't in that box anyway, you're good. You're good. Keep going, keep unlearning, keep expanding, keep growing. And I knew that was the confirmation that I needed. So the more this happened, the more confident I got in the person that I was unraveling and the person I was re-revealing. It got to the point that I actually looked forward to these random confirmations, these random coincidences. And I stopped referring to them as weird or crazy. I just stopped. And instead, I called them my thank yous. I had a thank you today, you know? And the more thank yous I received, I thanked them more. And I found that I doubted less. And I feared less because I was being led more. So where did this leave me on that continuum that I described earlier? Why did I stop referring to myself as Christian, and why did I start leaning towards being spiritual? And more importantly, why, as of late, have I felt the need to come back to Christianity? The truth is, I was mad that I was being forced to choose. Why did I have to choose? Because somewhere, somehow, by believing in things that Jesus came to teach us, I had somehow, some way been deemed to have stepped out of Christianity and into spirituality. But why though? Aren't all these things that I practice and we all practice the exact same thing that Jesus preached? So I look back on the story of Jesus. As I do, I remember, we all know that he was a healer. He laid his hands on people, curing their ailments, like many people do in this room who are Reiki masters and energy healers. Jesus was a medium, communicating with God and angels. Jesus was a psychic, prophesying things, his death. Judas, you would denounce me 3 times before the rooster crowed, and it happened. Foretold his death. He was the original psychic. And Jesus said, you guys can do all things that I can do. He didn't put limits on us. So the way I see it, the path that I've been following all these years as a medium, as a psychic, as a Reiki master, as a healer, are truly the path and the teachings of Jesus, whom we're supposed to be modeling Christianity after. So where is this a disconnect? Where has the Christian faith gone off track? For me, I see it in 3 ways. Number 1, we assign human emotions to God. God is God. And thank goodness for that, by the way. I would just say that. Because God doesn't have the emotions that we as humans do. But in order to wrap our minds around the concept of God, we assign God human attributes like male and female, like anger and jealousy. The truth is, God isn't human, so not male or female. Nor does God experience jealousy, because he doesn't want any idols before him. God doesn't get jealous. Why would God be jealous? Of who? Who compares to God? I mean, when I think about it, I'm like, what? Why are you mad? You're not mad. You're not mad at anything. You are just who you are. I am that I am. So, but who does get jealous? Humans. We do. It's human nature to crave attention, to crave love, to crave adoration. And when we don't get it, we withhold in retaliation. The love of God, of the Creator, is unconditional. There is no withholding, no matter what. There's nothing you need to do to keep it or to earn it. And it's not going anywhere. Further, Christianity teaches us that God is omnipresent, meaning everywhere all the time. Everywhere all the time. So the Creator cannot hide from you. It's impossible. Because you can't go anywhere that God is not. It's impossible. The truth is that the Creator is a loving God, a non-judging God, a God who patiently waits for us to explore our human experience, a God who sends us angels and guides to keep us, to help us, as we learn and navigate this human experience, a God who, when we mess up, picks us up, wipes our tears, and waits with us as we summon the courage to keep going, a God who unfortunately takes the blame for the acts of humans, yet still extends us his grace in hopes that we then extend that same grace to our fellow humans. Aren't you glad God isn't human like us? Yeah, thank you. You heard the saying that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. But somehow we seem to see ourselves as separate from God. God versus spirituality. You're either religious or you are spiritual. I remember growing up and being steeped in my fully hardcore Christian walk, and the phrase NOTW was out and about. You remember that? Not of this world. And it's showing up on wristbands and t-shirts, and it stood for, like I said, not of this world. Meaning that we as Christians would be in the world, should be in the world, but not of the world, because the world is full of sinners, and we weren't sinners. There was a distinction that was made between us and them. And as I reflect back, I feel that's one of the fundamental places where the faith has failed us. There is no distinction. We all chose to incarnate on this earth, to have a human experience, to learn, to grow, to evolve our souls. Meaning we came here to be in it, to be of it, to experience it, and to change it for the better. I always think fondly of the story of Jesus meeting the prostitute at the well in the book of John. After that brief exchange where he broke several rules, he spoke to a woman. She was Samaritan. He asked for a drink of water out of her cup. Ooh, can't do that. And more importantly, he says, go call your husband. And she says, I don't have a husband. He said, I know, you got 5. And the one you live with isn't even yours. He just called her out completely, right? But he did it out of love and let her know that, you know what, I'm still here talking to you. And it's fine. And he extended grace so much so that she went and turned around and prophesied on his behalf because she saw the love and no judgment. That's Jesus. So Jesus had been modeling for us that very thing, to go out in the world, to be in it, to immerse ourselves in, to connect with it and the people in it. See them for who they are, love them anyway, and do it in such a way that the encounter leaves them with a desire to spread the news of God. Not to win souls, not to save anyone from hell, but to do it through love. Finally, we discount that we don't know everything about God. In truth, all things are possible when it comes to God. So many times when I speak to hardcore Christians in the religious right, I notice that there's a resistance to admitting that everything about God cannot be known or explained. Meaning, I always say, God is above my pay grade. I just don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm here on earth. I have no idea. I'm not there. I'm here. I have no idea. And so I remember sometimes I would see or hear certain pastors in the faith talk about certain people are going to hell for certain things. And I was thinking to myself, well, how do you know God doesn't like that? I mean, I know you don't like it, but how do you know God doesn't like it? I mean, you're here with me. So how do you know? Because you haven't been there, because you're here with me. And I always wondered in my mind how we judge. When I began to awaken on my path, I realized that my human brain can never, ever, 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 ever comprehend the vastness, the omnipotence, the all-knowing energy of the Creator. Never. Which means everything is possible when it comes to God. Which means we can indeed communicate with those in the spirit world. Which means we can heal each other. Which means God can divinely orchestrate everything to happen, even though it may blow our minds. Any coincidence? So where does this leave us now? If you're like one of the people, like me, who strayed from Christianity because you feel it has failed you, why don't you join me in reclaiming the true meaning of adhering to the teachings of one of the master teachers, Jesus. And I say one of the master teachers because I believe there are many master teachers who walk the earth, he being one of them. Because I feel that there are no coincidences. I know there are people in this room who have struggled with these same feelings that I expressed today. And I see some head nodding. Maybe those experiences have made you walk away from church. It's okay. God didn't leave you. I invite you to reframe your mind, as I've been doing. Take into account all the miraculous coincidences that stand out in your mind and how your path has been unfolded. You are here today, not by coincidence. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Know that you are not here by accident. There are no coincidences. Stay blessed.